Hi, this is Pat Moorhead, and we're back for another Moor Insights and Strategy Data Center podcast. We took a few weeks off, which I hate. Just blame me, and give all the credit to this amazing crew here. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Matt, Will, and Paul, and we analyze the top data center and data center edge news. We're talking compute, cloud, security, storage, networking operations, data management, AI, quantum, and more. And by the way, I will take your apology if you haven't been on here and ask you what the heck your problem is. Gentlemen, how you doing?
Good. Great.
Rocking. Yeah.
Gosh, no major technical problems before we got in. I'm feeling just amazed, and really happy about that. But I'm feeling good. I bailed out last week. I know y'all had some other things you had to tend to, but hey, we've got a pretty good following going here, and we're only in episode 9. My hope is, like some of the other podcasts I do, we're on episode 179. We're going to get there, guys. I don't know if doing it every other week and then skipping a week will get there, but I think I'm getting really good feedback on this. So we have a great show. Today we have a lot of content. We're covering vast data. We're talking about this new startup, Nile, network as a service. Paul's going to do the science corner here with LK-99, which I can't wait to hear his feedback on, and maybe he'll levitate for us on camera. I don't know. Matt's going to hit Intel and AMD earnings, the bellwether for data center CPUs, and a few GPUs thrown in there as well. Will's going to talk about Black Hat 2023. Will, man, I've been riding you for years to talk about Black Hat. And here we are, man. Hey, Will, you going to Black Hat this year?
It's happening.
You going?
Yeah, it's happening. I'm always impressed with RSA conference, and so it was interesting. But I'll save.
Save that. But you are wearing the shirt. You didn't go to Black Hat, but you're wearing the shirt. You did get a shirt. We're gonna talk quantum. We have Paul on here. He is more at quantum on Twitter. We better be talking about quantum. Talking about how quantum computing on the grid. Matt's going to talk about what Matt does and compute. He's going to cloud CPU happening. So maybe Matt will start off. What is a cloud CPU? Is that a new term? And then we're going to follow up with Paul with some big announcements from AWS with HealthScribe. So let's dive in. I am going to call Matt. You are up, baby. What's going on here?
Just as I was drinking coffee.
So of course. That's the wrong button. That's the wrong button. Oh my gosh. Right. Here we help me. Okay. Can we fire the producer, please?
So for listeners who aren't familiar with vast data is, when you think about storage and different types of storage, vast data is, let's call it high performance storage. You are doing deep analytics, you're doing HPC, you're doing you need the lowest possible latency for your work, for your application. Vast data is who you call. Amazing performance. Primary customers are in financial services and 3-letter acronyms in the government. So we kind of get who they are, right? And storage and data are kind of colliding, right? There's an obvious dependency on application performance related to storage. And Vast, kind of looking at this, has made an announcement around expanding their support from but providing storage to the entire data management stack. So as data is collected, as data needs to be analyzed in real time, as data needs to be turned into intelligence, right? So you get a lot of going into Paul's swim lane here. I collect a lot of unstructured data, but in deep learning, I need to be able to take this unstructured data, kind of make it analyzable, if you will, and that's what vast data is doing. Kind of think like database, data warehouse, data lakes, data lake houses, taking all of that, putting it into one big platform and combining it with your storage. so that you have no limits as to the amount of data you can collect, where you collect it, who analyzes it within your organization, obviously, and what kind of analysis you do on it. This is huge. When you look at companies like Oracle, you look at companies like Databricks, Snowflake, everybody, right, that is in that data management space, they were looking at the problem from the top down. Vast is the first company to look at it from the bottom up. And I'll be really interested to see kind of what other storage players that kind of play in the space are thinking about. But this is a big, big move. And I really think whether Vast is the right answer or the wrong answer, I think their vision is where we're going to see kind of the market move to, right? This consolidation of stacks, or no independence of storage, compute, even networking and data. It's all just blobs that we manage, we create and we manage, or we create and utilize, and gets managed on the back end automatically. Really exciting news. I think it's a lot bigger than the market has given it credit for. But I think, as with a lot of things they do, over time, the market's going to figure it out and understand just how pivotal this announcement was.
Yeah. So first off, kind of a reinforcement that you need specialty storage for specialty workloads. And as we saw with Pure, right, highly parallelized workloads that they had leaned into, Vast took this a step further on the performance front and did a lot of heavy integration on the hardware side. And as we've seen, everybody's a storage play wants to be a data play. Like, right. In fact, I get a little frustrated when I show up on storage companies' readouts, and it's like, we're a data management company. I'm like, no, that's like Cloudera. No, that's MongoDB, or that's right. Somebody like that's Vertex or something like that with Google. But I'm always interested to see what Vast is doing. It is funny. Every three or so years, a high-flying new storage company comes out that's going to change it all, right? Yeah. And big valuations, they go public, but that's great. It's competition, which is great. And I also love doing the Victory Lap, which is, Matt and you and I talked. You were the compute guy for so long, and then we added storage based on this premise that even compute and storage were colliding here, and here we go. It's accelerated workloads. So great stuff, guys. Let's move to the second topic. We're moving to Nile, and maybe you can start off, Will, by who is Nile and what do they do? I know the answer to that, but I want to hear it from the pro.
All right, buddy. Well, talk about collision. So networking and security are colliding as well. And so Nile hopes to take advantage of that.
I'm sorry. Is this the Star Wars room?
It is the Star Wars room.
God, I am so excited. I didn't see that when we brought everybody in. That is freaking awesome.
My lightsaber is over here somewhere.
Pillows. Oh, gosh. Will, man, you're a nerd, dude, and I love you. I love you for that. You're so good. You can't even
see. I mean, I've got a lot more than what you can see in the background there.
I love it. I am so sorry. You're on a roll. We're talking about Nile and network as a service.
Yeah. Hey, so it's a crowded space, right? And, a lot of companies are focused on the convergence of networking and security, but Nile is interesting. And the headline that recently occurred was their Series C round. So they raised $175 million recently, and that brings the total that they've raised to date to $300 million. Nile is also backed by John Chambers. Hey, John, needs no introduction. He's a legend in the networking space, former Cisco founder and CEO. He was part of Pensando, I guess, before the AMD acquisition there. But what John's vision for the company is around driving self-network operability. And so this is a grounds up design. They've been out for about a year, and they're trying to make the whole notion of managing networking and security easy. They sort of position the fact that they offer zero trust security for free. And, one of the things they point to is there's no kind of refactoring of legacy infrastructure. So this is a grounds up architecture, microservices, highly containerized. And, again, on the surface, they're entering a very competitive market, but the value proposition seems really strong.
Yeah, I've met with the Nile folks a couple times over a couple years, and it is amazing what you can do in any technology when it's a clean sheet of paper, and then when it's backed by people like John Chambers, you immediately get credibility. John Chambers was actually on HPE Discover stage a couple years back with Antonio Neri. Right. So, by the way, that was very interesting because, Aruba, right? Right. Yeah. So anyways, interesting stuff. Hey, next topic, folks. I mean, this is geeky beyond geeky, but quite frankly, my favorite podcast, which is, after all the Moor Insights and a little bit of 6.5, is called the All In Podcast. And they've talked about LK-99. And, Paul's going to tell us what we should be thinking about this. And, we call this segment anti-gravity skateboards. Is that what LK-99 is going to be? That's what it's going to enable?
That's what I've been looking for all my life. Once I saw Back to the Future and that anti-gravity skateboard, that became my goal in life, is to acquire that. And I thought maybe I could have that when I saw the stuff on LK-99, but this is amazing. I mean, it's like a comedy, really. It's
like what is it? I mean, is it room temperature superconducting?
It's room temperature superconducting, and a group of Korean scientists thought that by mixing, copper and lead and some other stuff together, that they had actually created a room temperature superconductor. There were three scientists. There's always somebody that wants to get the news out. I had a nephew that, regardless of what news came around, whether it was good or bad, he wanted to be the first one to tell everybody. So there was a group of kind of three rogue scientists that published a paper on this room temperature superconducting. And it turned out there were a lot of errors and problems with it, and it was retracted. And it was kind of a rogue group. And then 6 other people published another paper that had an equal number of problems, and that's being corrected. But there's been a lot of different people trying to validate this and recreate it. And it's got some mixed reviews. Even one of the labs, Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, looked at it from density functional theory calculation and said, it could work maybe. And there's been a lot of other people that said, no, this is a big farce. So, right now I don't know where we stand. I might bring Pat in here. We talked to a couple of people about it.
Yeah, we talked to IBM about it. Probably, what did IBM have to say, Jerry Chow, about how this related to superconductive based quantum computers?
Yeah, of course, that's what we were interested in. And, basically he said, if you took this material and even if you brought it down to like 15 millikelvins, like they're doing with their superconducting transmons, if you brought it down to that cool level, it still wouldn't be any good for qubits. So it doesn't look like there's any opportunity to move quantum forward with this material. But I think maybe in 6 months we'll probably know if they'll come down on a solid conclusion, yes or no on this. So
yeah, no, it sounds good. And by the way, sorry fans, if you noticed, we flipped into the Hot Desk podcast. I think I'm definitely firing my producer. I mean, he's the worst. No, actually, I do the Hot Desk podcast with Melody Brew later in the afternoon. I think somebody was in making some fine tuning. So I can't wait. And Paul, you and I are working on some sort of a little 500 word on kind of what this means and what it doesn't. I mean, quite frankly, it's all Paul's genius. I might just make it easy, more palatable to choke down. Hey, let's get into earnings. And I do want to remind everybody that this show is for entertainment and informational purposes only. Don't take anything that we might infer on anything we might say as investment advice. So with that, Matt, Intel and AMD earnings last week. what happened? Are we back, baby? Is the data center back, or is it Painville at this point?
Well, this is what I want to get some of your take on as well. Yeah, I guess you can look at it one of two ways, right? Without context, maybe you'd be a little bit concerned. I think Intel was down 15% year over year for data center, and AMD was either up or down 2% or so. But I look at it as I look at it a little bit differently. I think Intel has hit a turning point, and I know we've talked about this in the past. When you look at kind of the trajectory of Intel and AMD over the last few years, it's certainly been AMD heavy, right? I mean, there's been a big ascent from AMD, and Intel has kind of slipped a little bit. AMD's had the advantage from a performance perspective, from love of the media perspective, so on and so forth. It feels to me like Gelsinger coming in, what Lisa Spellman has done, and Sandra Rivera, they've really kind of turned things around on the data center side. And I feel like, they've kind of hit that bottom, and I'm starting to see, certainly customer sentiment, and I'm starting to see it in the numbers. While the numbers are down, they're certainly better than they were. And it feels like there's some positive momentum building on that side. And AMD, I think in the face of a down cloud market, the company has done well to be where it is. And we haven't seen the influence or the impact of Bergamo, their cloud part, which we'll talk about later, hitting the market as well. So, I think there's positive to pull from both of these if you kind of look at things in context. But you know financials better than I did. I wanted to kind of get what your take is on all of this.
You think I might actually have an opinion on this? Yeah, absolutely have an opinion on this.
Maybe.
So there's a couple things going on here with both these companies financially. And again, kind of as a reminder, we're not equities analysts, but the reason that we show up for earnings call, it's the source of truth, right? You can't you can only spin less than you normally could because you might get sued or something by investors. And so there's the status of the market. There's how that company is doing in that market. And then there's other opportunities they may not be participating in.
Mm-hmm.
Macro view, both Intel and AMD, people want to know how they get some of that discrete GPU AI goodness that drove NVIDIA to $1 trillion market cap, right? Yeah. That is the number one question that is happening. And both companies are getting their arms ready to do this. The latest from AMD we saw with the MI300, which is an inference data center play, one card, massive memory footprint for foundational models, and of course inside of that sphere, LLMs. And then on the Intel side, right, they have Habana, they have data center GPUs. And like AMD, they have AI that can be accelerated inside of Xeons and Epics. Yeah. So that is the macro of how it's going. And Intel, then on the financial side, is digging out of a hole that it created, where it took a 2.5 year lead in fab technologies and capabilities and turned that into a 2.5 year deficit. Okay, yeah. Literally a 5 year movement, and they've been digging themselves out of that. And what that impacts design. So think of a design you locked in on that was like, hey, we're creating this design around 7 nanometer. It ends up you can only do 14 or you can only do 10. You're literally backporting. You're making the core smaller. You have to relook at your energy budget. So yeah, literally digging themselves out of that giant hole. And this quarter for Intel was, hey, better than expected. Yeah. And I actually talked to Pat Gelsinger. I was out in Korea, and we talked through that. And he's going to be conservative, not like, oh my God, we're back, baby. Yeah, he's like, no, this is, first of all, what Gelsinger committed to is a 5-year plan. And he's like, we're in year 3. And I always try to bring that out in my articles. So we got about 2.5 years to go here to get them out here. And I always focus on the 5 nodes in 4 years. Yeah. Let's not debate what a real node is, but they're on track to do that. And if they can hit 5 nodes in 4 years and, complete this CapEx $200 billion investment in foundries and fabs, in addition to IFS and buying Tower, it's going to be a force to reckon with. Intel is always the most dangerous when you have them in a corner. Matt, you and I worked at AMD. Guess what?
Sir.
We were gaining, we had 30% server market share and 45% consumer client share.
Yep.
We were crushing them. And then AMD lost the recipe. Intel Martians landed and dropped this architecture called Core architecture, designed out of the Israeli design center, and AMD went away for a couple of years. So, yeah.
You know, Pat, one other thing on that I find interesting, and you know, where Intel enterprise IT is always a laggard when it comes to adoption, and I think Intel was smart to focus on making sure it kept that kind of anchor, right? They put a lot of effort into pricing and other concessions to try and keep a stronghold there, and I think that has served them well as they attempt this turnaround, or kind of go through this turnaround, because cloud is always going to move to fastest, best, cheapest. They can move a lot more quicker, but Intel's really held on there. So I think that helps with the whole kind of, where do they go and how do they maintain their footing? So it's a fun play, and AMD has done great too. So I don't mean to, but it's certainly fun. It's good for the market.
I mean, the client computing market was down 50%. AMD was down 50% in client computing.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey,
and it,
Hey, Pat, quick anecdote. So I've been spending time with the Intel confidential computing team. You and I had that briefing with Rick and company a few months ago. As I spend more time with them, I'm really impressed with what they're doing to drive adoption of SGX and TDX extensions and fourth generation Xeon scalable processors. And really, they're positioning themselves very well to provide silicon level security for AI workloads. And so getting back, AI is the hottest thing. I'm going to talk about that when I talk about Black Hat. But they're really positioning themselves well, I think, for the future, and securing not only the data, but these AI models is going to be critical. So I think they're doing some great stuff, and you'll hear more about that. I'm actually working with them on a research brief. So
awesome. That's awesome. Hey, we've talked a lot about this, and I think it deserves a lot of this. I mean, so much competition, so much market cap value. Let's go to the next topic. Black Hat. Will got the shirt for it.
Yeah.
What is it? Hey, I went to Black Hat and all I got with this was this silly black shirt. Right?
Are you allowed to talk about anything?
Yes, but then I'm going to have to kill you. No, I'm just joking. No, it's an interesting show. This year, no surprise, AI was a big theme, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And XDR, made headlines as well. And, from my perspective, RSA conference, that is the perennial security conference in San Francisco. Black Hat is no slouch. But what I really found with Black Hat, that there weren't a ton of really earth-shattering announcements. There, a lot of the requisite, threat intelligence reports. There was a lot of discussion around ransomware, and companies like Zscaler and Fortinet publishing these reports. But on the AI front, I found it interesting. DARPA announced a 2-year contest, and it's really to drive innovation around AI. And they're calling it their AI Cyber Challenge. And so this will run through 2025. I mean, 2 years in the tech industry is an eternity. Yeah. But I found it was interesting. It's funded by DARPA, which is part of the Department of Defense. And, I think we've talked about AI on, prior podcasts when it comes to security. I mean, it can be a very effective tool for point solution providers and platform providers, but it can be a double-edged sword, and it can be used by bad actors, to do all kinds of damage and that sort of thing. So that was interesting. And then from an XDR perspective, Cisco made some announcements. Cisco continues to build its momentum in security. And at the event, they announced some new recovery capabilities for remediating ransomware. And so Cisco, from my perspective, continues to sort of build upon its strength in security. And hey, when you look at Cisco's last earnings, I think we've got, their earnings coming up, and not the too distant future. Security is a big opportunity for Cisco to lean into and really drive some incremental revenue. But and then finally, there was some announcements around cloud native application protection, and Palo Alto Networks announced a CI/CD security module that sort of enhances what they're doing there. So kind of a lot to choose from there. I do plan to write a Forbes article, hope to post it next week, but that's sort of my take at a high level, Pat.
That's great. I really appreciate that. And, it is wild how Black Hat kind of started and where it's become, and where we give money for bug bounties. We used to just be bug bounties. Now we give money for security bounties, and there's white hats and black hats. It's spy versus spy. I'm really interested to see how generative AI changes all this in the future. Yeah. Let's move along to our next topic, and that is quantum in the grid. So what's going on? Quantum in the power grid. What the heck's going on?
Yeah, this is a new first for quantum. Quantum is gradually moving out and doing different things, and this is a new application. Atom Computing is located in Boulder, Colorado, and Atom is a startup using neutral atoms and as qubits, and it's working with the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in Golden. It seems like the people that manage the power grid are kind of concerned about what's going to happen in the future. Right now, they've got a supercomputer that does optimization on something goes down or breaks or a transformer blows out. They have to have ways to optimize the grid and reroute it and that type of thing. There's like 7,300 power plants in the grid and like a couple 100,000 miles of high voltage lines and millions of miles of low voltage lines and a lot of distribution transformers in the grid. So it's a highly complex optimization job. So they're looking at using quantum because it's got a lot more capability than like a supercomputer for analyzing a lot of different scenarios. So they're going to be testing that out. One of the first jobs is that they're going to simulate a local line goes down, and Atom Computing will have to use its quantum computer to simulate a reroute to fix that over. So it should be interesting, and I expect it to probably expand out more. It may be some industrial applications for managing power at the, like a large building or something like that. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I love that real use cases are kind of coming to the surface.
Yeah.
And I also like it, before we've, whatever we want to call it, quantum supremacy, where real workloads are better done in quantum than they are solely with traditional computing. Yeah. And this is a good one. And folks are doing, really good stuff there at Atom.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting. Atom, to me, could be one of these dark horses that, some people might not be keeping a big enough eye on. Yeah. And they could be the one that come out and really surprise a lot of folks. They don't say as much as the other folks, right? Which always like, that's either you're behind or you just don't want to talk about the awesomeness. And I know enough to be dangerous. And we talk to their CEO a lot and their team to get input. But interesting stuff. Hey, let's move to something that's very straightforward, something we think you'll really like. Cloud CPU happenings. What does that even mean?
I know.
Is there a cloud CPU versus like a edge CPU, an on-prem data set? Like, what is this? Just fancy marketing talk here?
We could talk for hours on this one.
We can do that.
Be careful what you wish for. I can talk for hours about anything. So it's interesting. It's the reason I kind of put this in as a topic is I've been, as you read through kind of the press and you talk to, our customers and IT folks, obviously, you just hear different things. And, a couple things stood out to me. I saw a report that showed that, 40% of ARM CPUs in the cloud are being deployed in China. I said that like Trump, China. I found, we recently learned that Intel developed a specialized 96 core part for AWS. Intel or AMD has 128 core Bergamo coming out into the cloud. There are rumors of Azure, Google, pretty much everybody developing their own custom silicon to meet their needs. That's not even hitting on, what's going on in the risk community. Companies like Tenstorrent and others that have kind of developed their own specific silicon. It's a crazy, mad world, Pat, that we live in. And it's just, I'm fascinated to see how kind of like cloud, yes, our cloud CPUs unique. Yeah, in some ways they are. They are unique, right? It is specialized silicon to some degree. I think at some point I heard Intel had a cloud customization organization that was full of engineers that was bigger than the engineering organization of its largest competitor. That is crazy to me, right? So yeah, it is specialized. So I'm kind of curious how this kind of translates down into enterprise IT. This is where I was going. As Intel develops a specialized 96 core part for AWS, are there chances that this gets kind of turned into a general market part that can be consumed by enterprise IT? As AMD takes Bergamo that's targeted at cloud computing customers, is there a possibility that this goes, into large enterprise organizations? Does ARM eventually make its way down into enterprise IT? There are just all these interesting dynamics that go on. It kind of it leaves consumers not really caring about what the back end is necessarily for their workloads. But when does this actually start bleeding down into the mainstream consumer market, or does it even matter? So this is another one I was kind of thrown out for kind of debate among four great minds, and kind of, if you guys have any opinions on where this market's going and what it means to the enterprise.
Well, we could help them brand it. We could call it C squared PU.
There we go. Well, I mean, we need a new PU, CPU, DPU, GPU, APU,
Right.
NPU,
IPU.
IPU. Yeah, thanks, Will. So that's Marvell. That was Marvell's initial. I think it was. I don't know. Anyways, a lot of PUs out there. No, I give AWS and Ampere a lot of credit for this, right? Mm-hmm. And as long as I know, I think when I started the firm 12 years ago, it was AWS wants a lot of cores and not a lot of anything else, right? Yep. And I don't need AVX. I don't want certain features that I want it for my architecture. And then they ended up building their own with Graviton. Yep. And then Ampere recognized that, okay, this is an AWS thing only. AMD, although it had announced ARM cores, early on for the data center, it never actually came to fruition. What I'm really interested to see is how much of the stuff that non-cloud people did AMD really take out of there, and then how much is Intel in their future chip? Is it 2024, 2025, Matt? I like to call these many cores, right? Yeah. You take, and then, by the way, and then how do you, the reason that Graviton slides in so easily into AWS is because they invested in this technology called Nitro, which was essentially an offloading mechanism. Yeah. And they've done that for a decade. So I think this also falls under the competition is great. And competition is really good for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear what you're saying, and it is. I really struggle sometimes with understanding, does what is happening in the cloud translate into buying patterns or adoption patterns within the enterprise? When did AWS come out with Graviton? 4 years ago, 5 years ago? It's been a while, right?
a while.
Yeah.
They're on their third generation.
Third generation. Still don't see it in the enterprise, right? Or not Graviton, but you still don't see ARM bleeding into the enterprise in any great way, right? AMD has killed it in cloud, but they've struggled with breaking through the enterprise. Question is, does enterprise even matter anymore? And I don't mean that in a negative way, but
I know what you mean. What you mean, Matt. Yeah. I look at it as kind of what is your design center, right? Like you have to start somewhere, and then you depop or pop for your tertiary markets. And I think it's a great question. With the buying power of the data center on-prem is still larger than the public cloud. Okay. Sure. But, and then there's a lot of question and debate on where is it going to go. AWS first service was 14 years ago. Okay. And then we had this not so great private cloud experience with OpenStack, which was great, except that was open, but it wasn't a full stack. You had to complete it, and only every year did the new bits come down. Yeah. And that didn't work for anybody. Yeah. So, by the way, OpenStack was kind of Amazon's old technology that they had. That was the genesis of that. But now we have containers, okay, that we've all agreed the container is the thing. Yep. That even if you put a VM in a container, right, it's a container. Yep. So we have a transport that can be used across, right? You can use Red Hat technology and VMware technology and Kubernetes, and even Amazon ECS as a transport that can go around for that compute layer. Yep. So that's a long way of saying, I don't know, we're 3 or 4 years into this hybrid multi-cloud. Yeah. And, there's been some Yeti sightings of repatriation as well. That, the way that I look at repatriation is, hey, as soon as I see the revenues of the on-prem folks going up bigger than the compute of AWS, GCP, and Azure and Oracle Cloud, sign me up as a believer, baby. Yeah. I'm there. And I'm also not we were the first analyst firm to really 10 years ago put a stake in the ground for hybrid. And everybody was like, no, you don't believe, you're a cloud denier. I'm like, no, I used to be Google's biggest supplier in 2006. I am not a cloud denier. I get it. So yeah, by the way, AMD used to be, Google's data center used to be Pyrax, and they would put bare PCAs and they would Velcro storage on there. Like that was their infrastructure, and AMD was a huge provider of that technology.
Yep. That's where our revenues came from. Exactly.
So they're like, wait a second, Opteron, why are you growing so much? It's not IBM. IBM was big. It wasn't necessarily HPE. And it's like, oh, Google, right? And back in the day, Google used to go all in on a processor architecture. Like all the new data centers for a year, right, were AMD Opteron. It ended up, this is public information, Google was AMD's largest Opteron customer. So that's your history lesson, kids, for the day. Hey, let's go to our final topic, and that is AWS HealthScribe, AI in healthcare. And I'm just going to set the set the mood lighting here. So AWS has a 3-stack AI capability, right? At the bottom, they've got the infrastructure and frameworks like PyTorch, TensorFlow. And it's like, hey, if you want to come in and leverage that as an IaaS play, you're in. And then they've got like the PaaS layer, which is, the SageMakers and the Bedrocks that are more of a, hey, you want a development environment that leverages that IaaS layer on the bottom. And then on the top, you have applications, and I'll call that SaaS. Some people might call it more of a PaaS play, but AWS HealthScribe is one of the applications that sits on top of that 3-layer cake. Paul, it's all you.
Yeah, thank you, Pat, for setting that up. HealthScribe is really interesting. It's something that's needed. It's basically a combination of voice recognition and generative AI, and it's used to create charts for office visits. It'll record the patient, record the doctor, and it will create the chart, what happened. It'll specify in medical terms, medical conditions and stuff like that. And then once it gets through with that daily visit and what happened between the doctor and the patient, it'll provide a summary for the doctor to review. It'll have like chief complaint, the history, assessment of what the problem was, the medical plan. And then it's got some neat little things in there, like to maintain the safety is that if you've got a question about something that it said, you can click on that. It'll go back to the original transcript and you can see what the patient actually said. So it's really a neat product, and it's being used by several of the large companies. 3M is going to use it. They've got they're going to, I think, deploy it like to 300,000 different doctors, and they're going to use that basically as a foundation to use to bring in some of their other technical pieces that they want to put on it. So it sounds like really a neat product, and I think it sounds simple, but it can save billions of dollars, I think, because when I was going through college, I worked in a hospital from midnight until 8 a.m. and did a lot of stuff and had to do a lot of charting. It's like most boring thing you can do. And they've got a voice recognition now, which is really good, but it doesn't have the patient aspect of it. So I mean, it's going to free up a lot of time, and it's going to reduce a lot of errors in terms of coding information for the insurance, lower the cost. I mean, just a lot of different important things that it can do. So
yeah, I've got an opinion here. My wife's actually she's a scribe for a retina specialty clinic in Austin, and she's an auditor. And so I hear her grousing all the time about all of the errors that are made by human scribes. And so this has potentially tremendous impact. Now, it's probably going to eliminate or weed out some of the weaker scribes that do this manually. But on the surface, I mean, I'm personally, I hear it daily from my wife. It sounds very, very compelling.
Yeah. Not only do they misspell things, you can't read what they're writing. So, so you got, I mean, it really is a neat application, and it's got, it's got like some of the words that we highlighted. If you want the latest medical information on that, you click on that and you can get documentation on the medicine or the condition. So it's really clever.
Yeah, big picture, anything that can reduce costs or improve outcomes in healthcare is important. If you look at the percentage of GDP of healthcare versus overall GDP, it's just skyrocketing. Part of that is the aging of America. And by the way, we're in a much better, Japan has more people dying than are being born. And so does China. So we're still, I think we're 2.7 versus births versus 2.2 deaths. So we're still in the plus column on that. But essentially with an aging population, you take away, I hate the word tax revenue. It's our money. It's not your revenue. It's like, oh, it's my money. But taxes go down because you don't have as many people working, but the cost of healthcare go up. No. So you either have to radically improve people's health, which the last time I checked, we're not actually getting healthier as Americans. Basically, we're like 21st century Rome and Greece during their heyday, eating everything and just, gorging ourselves on all this stuff. And we don't incent anybody to be healthier. So what healthcare ends up doing, and I spent 10 years. I was on the board of directors of St. David's Medical Center, and I was chairman of the board for 5 years. So I've got a little bit of history here and experience. But anything that can reduce the cost, because we know people aren't going to get healthier, is going to be paramount. And I think this is part of it. Doctors can, well, it's a twofer: better outcomes because the scribe is more accurate, and two, I don't need as many people to support it. So theoretically, I can have more patients. So, anyways, this is good, folks. What an episode!
Yeah.
I mean, we covered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 topics. We cranked it in to 45 minutes. I mean, I'm just going to do a virtual pat on the back, and I would pat you on the back if I was there. But no, anyways, it's great to see everybody.
Yeah.
Any travel coming up? And, I'll start here. I've been in town for a week, and I'm staying in town for another week. And then it's VMware Explorer for me, Google Cloud next. I'm taking some time off, and then I go to Salesforce Dreamforce. And then I'm off to Intel Innovation, Oracle, and maybe another. So that's all that travel. It goes up through, September 21st.
Yeah.
Where are you going? Where are you guys going? Are you staying put? Paul, I know you and I will be at Intel Innovation.
Yeah. I'm going to a couple places. I have to look at my calendar. I don't usually pack until the day before.
I'm actually headed to Boise next week to spend some time with Cradle Point. So I'm looking forward to some cooler weather. It's just been an oven in Texas. It's been hot, I think, all around the country, but I'm looking forward to that. And then a little time in the Keys, and then I'm back on the road. In September, I'll be in London for Connected Britain. And as I enter October, head back to Riga for 5G Techratory. So I've got 4 or 5 international business trips coming up. So I'm taking my vitamins and getting rested up before the travel.
That's great.
Yeah, I've got Oracle. I'll be at Innovation as well. Excited for that. Love to hear what Intel has to say. And then it seems like there is a kludge of analyst summits coming up one week after another. That those are always fantastic. I think
Lenovo has one of those, right?
Yeah, Lenovo, Dell, those are Oracle. Those are a lot of fun. So I think much of late August through October will be spent on the road at analyst summits and shows. Lots of fun. Lots to report on.
Great job, guys. So, hey, this is it for episode 9 of the Moor Insights Strategy Data Center Podcast. Let us know what you think. We all spend way too much time on social media. You can hit us up on that. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you dislike. Hey, if you have a topic that you think we should be bringing on, we'll get the Star Chamber together, commiserate to see if we want to cover it. But appreciate that. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe button. Tell your friends and family, dogs, everybody. Share this and let them know that you like this show. Thanks. Take care.